So we recently saw the release of this year's Brands Annual Magazine and the highly coveted Most Loved Brands listing for 2024. What are your main observations when you look at this year's list?
The long list of nominations that we saw for the various categories that we surveyed shows that there are a plethora of choices for the consumers. So they are not short of choice. That's going to be challenging for most brands and corporates as well. Some people moving away from luxury items and going towards the day-to-day stuff. But then on the other hand, we also saw more people, some segments moving towards the luxury items as well. Sustainability has come into play and counts especially for this segment. The LMD readership is slightly different to the general public of Sri Lanka. And for this segment, sustainability is extremely important, and that's something that we've seen as well.
LMD recently released its Most Loved Brands listing in this year's Brands Annual Magazine, and tonight's conversation revolves around that. Stay tuned.
Some bonds give more returns. Get more security and more interest on your fixed deposits from Sri Lanka's largest finance company, LMDtv Finance.
Hello and welcome to LMDtv. Tonight on the forum, we're talking about most loved brands. And with us, we have the Managing Director and the CEO of PepperCube Consultants, Atheek Marikar. Hi, Atheek. It's lovely to have you on our show.
Thank you.
So we recently saw the release of this year's Brands Annual Magazine and the highly coveted Most Loved Brands listing for 2024. And this list celebrates brands that have earned the love and the respect and the loyalty of consumers across Sri Lanka. So I think my first question to you is, what are your main observations when you look at this year's list?
I think when we looked at the Brands Annual Magazine in 2024, the Most Loved Brand, communication is key. It's obvious. It seems obvious when I say it, but it certainly is key. And size matters. End of the day, the size of an organization, the size of the brand, those matter as well. We also saw that respondents differentiated between corporate brand versus product and service brand. So you might have a very strong product or a service, but that does not necessarily mean that you will automatically be seen as a strong corporate brand, or you'll be seen as a corporate that's loved. So I can have a favorite brand, but not necessarily that does not lead into the organization being a loved organization. We also saw that local brands are gaining momentum. It has been there, I think, for the last 2 to 3 years, but certainly this year we saw that there was a bigger push for local brands. And the last thing that I would like to mention is the long list of nominations that we saw for the various categories that we surveyed shows that there are a plethora of choices for the consumers. So they are not short of choice. That's going to be challenging for most brands and corporates as well. So those are the main key highlights that we saw.
I think we'll all agree that the 2024 edition of Brands Annual was released in the midst of innumerable uncertainties and a marketplace that's governed by a lot of volatility. So from what you observed, what impact did the macro environment have on LMD's readership when they were nominating their favorite most loved brands?
I think the last 24 months have been extremely volatile, right? So it's not just 23, but from at least Q2 and Q3 of 22 was volatile as well. And that's when it started. So 23 was seen more as a healing and recovery period. So we went through the Q2, Q3, 22 shock that we all had to put up with. So 23 was more a healing period. So on one hand, given the backdrop of that, on one hand, we saw people moving into day-to-day products, services over luxury items, all right? Because they have to manage their funds, they have to manage their expenditure. So they moved away from luxury items to day-to-day item products and services. But on the other hand, we also saw there were certain segments of the population, because of the change in environment and because of the changes that took place in the country, that they had a higher liquidity and an increase in their cash flow as well, right? So as a result, they started spending a little bit more on some of the luxury items. So yes, you had some people moving away from luxury items and going towards the day-to-day stuff. But then on the other hand, we also saw more people, some segments moving towards the luxury items as well. I mean, we could talk about this as indulgence or even revenge shopping, right? Yes, I can't travel abroad because the dollar moved up to 340, 350 rupees. So it was too expensive to travel abroad. So let me go to one of the shopping malls and shop till I fall, right? And buy some of the luxury items because I'm saving on traveling abroad, saving on hotels, which I'm not doing. So we saw that that change that took place as well. The lifestyle choices also had a role to play with the brands that they nominated as well. So in the last 1.5, 2 years, the lifestyle changes that took place in Sri Lanka had a strong reasoning for people to nominate brands as well. We also saw, as I said previously, a skew towards local, right? So lots of local giants started moving up in the list. There was also that could be for two reasons. One is the consumer, the customer felt that they need to buy local, and therefore they need to support local. And as a result, they ended up being in the list as well. The last point that I would like to make there is banks and telcos did well, whether that is because of the change in times, because of the digital drive that these two categories pushed in 22 and 23, even starting from 2020 with COVID, whether the results of that is the benefit of that is what they are seeing, or whether it is just banks and telcos advertise more than anybody else, and we are still seeing the impact of that. So these are probably the key highlights that we saw there as well.
And from what we've seen from the study, what do you think is the mantra for being a most loved brand in Sri Lanka?
Very interesting question, actually. In fact, the question that I like the most. You need to have a unique brand proposition. If you don't have a unique brand proposition, you're not going to be a brand that can be loved by the general public or by your consumer. You need to also have a differentiated product and service offering, right? If you're just another brand, if you're offering, if your product or your service is no different to somebody else, then there is no reason for somebody to love your brand more than the other, right? Because then you're equally loved, right? If I'm not offering something different. Sustainability has come into play and counts especially for this segment. The LMD readership is slightly different to the general public of Sri Lanka. And for this segment, sustainability is extremely important. And that's something that we've seen as well. So I would say the key points are have a unique brand proposition, have a differentiated product and service offering, sustainability counts, especially for this segment, and finally, stay relevant during these challenging times or you lose the race. If you're not going to be relevant, if you're not seen as relevant to the customer, to the consumer, then you're going to lose the race.
PepperCube consultants conducted a comprehensive study to learn about the most loved brands of LMD readers. Atheek, can you briefly take us through the methodology in terms of sampling as well as data collection?
So the sampling framework was based on LMD readership. That's the subscribers of LMD. We did a random selection of respondents from a database that was shared by LMD. The data collection methodology was computer-aided telephone interviews, or CATI, and that's how we conducted the interview. We had a structured questionnaire, which was co-created with LMD, and took about 15 to 20 minutes per respondent, roughly. We covered a total of 34 categories as part of the survey. And the sample size was roughly about 400, coming from areas like Western Province, Southern Province, Central Province, Northwestern Province, and also Northern Province. We had a good male-female ratio. 52 to 48. So equally balanced ratio or representation both for males and females. So that was sort of the methodology.
And if I ask you, how eager and how willing were LMD readers to share their feedback on their most loved brands? And of course, what were the challenges that PepperCube consultants had to face when it came to reaching the sample and, of course, conducting the interviews?
Initially, when we made the call, when we got in touch with the respondents, the first question was, how did you get my name? How did you get my contact details? Who gave it to you? Right? And they were a bit slightly nervous and apprehensive. But when we explained the process and when we spoke to them about what we were trying to do and how we got their contact details from LMD, and we had the required documents from LMD to conduct the survey as well, they became extremely cooperative and we had no challenges in engaging with them. But having said that, the challenge was to get time. Remember, we are talking about senior corporate leaders. I mean, if you look at the LMD list of subscribers, the who's on that list, so getting them to give us time was challenging, but it was managed. So it took us time to get the survey done, but it was an extremely well-represented sample that we ended up with. So it was challenging but manageable.
It's time to take a very short break, but we'll soon be back to talk more about most loved brands.
What makes a truly awesome insurance company? Is it the skills to manage big numbers and big responsibilities? Well, that's definitely part of it. But there's more. It's the people. They're awesome. Super passionate about looking out for others and putting in their time for people's finances. It's not just the people. It's how we do things that's awesome. From being trendsetters of the industry to being connectors or inventors. It's about well-being and how we achieve it. Our teams hustle non-stop to meet the needs of the people. That's why we're on the rise. But it's not just about how we do things either. It's about how we improve things. Helping our clients thrive in a world that's full of awesome goals to achieve. Making the maximum out of the minimum. But wait, there's more to it. There's one last thing that truly makes an insurance company awesome. It's that we care about our people and our customers. All of this combined, it's been a pretty awesome year. And we're excited for tomorrow.
Display your brand message on digital screens at prime locations. The largest digital advertising network in Sri Lanka. Emerging Media.
Welcome back to the show. We're in conversation with the Managing Director and CEO of PepperCube Consultants, Atheek Marikar. And can we talk a little bit about the analysis? How did you, for instance, ensure the robustness and the rigor in terms of the analysis of the data collected?
Well, I think the key to any survey instrument, questionnaire, and even analysis is to keep it simple, right? And I think we LMD management and PepperCube were able to get the right balance for it. We got a good questionnaire out, which was easy to understand, which was easy to manage and administer, and the analysis as a result was straightforward. So I would say we did not have too many challenges with regards to the analysis itself, but the rigor was in the quality checking, right? Remember, each person could refer to a brand in a different way, refer to a company in a different way. Some could give the full name, some could give just one part of the name if it has three components in the name. Sometimes they might refer to the brand by the name of the company by the brand. So we had to verify those, ensure that the right rigor was put in place to ensure that the authenticity of the data is there. So I would say the rigor was more in analyzing the data with regards to companies and brand names rather than the analysis itself.
As our viewers would know, the most loved brands listing comprises of several categories. Of course, we cover corporate, product, and service brands. So, Atheek, can you share some insights on the feedback that you received in terms of these three sectors and what could possibly have been the reasons behind the feedback?
Yeah, so we had a total of 71 brands under the corporate brand segment that got featured, 108 brands under the product brand, and 57 under the service brand. So you can see a good list of companies and brands and service brands that got featured in it. The top 15 to 20 corporate brands were way ahead of the rest. So I said we had 71 brands in the corporate segment. So the top 15 to 20 were ahead of them. So we had a long tail with regards to the rest. John Keel's, Unilever, Emays, Harry's, and Dialog were amongst the top 5 in the corporate segment. We had a fair mix of local and global brands featured in the product list. We had a few surprises in that 108 brands that were there in the product brand. The top 5 product brands included 3 local and 2 global brands as well. Again, a nice mix as well, local and international brands. Munchie was leading the pack, followed by Coke and Elephant House. Again, 2 local brands, 1 global brand in the top 3 as well. If I take the top 5 service brands, we had 3 banks and 2 telcos there. Again, a good mix. We had Dialog on top, followed by Commercial Bank and Sampak Bank. Right? So again, telco 1, 2 banks followed. We also saw local brands like Kotmale and Highland getting the better of craft. Now, with this segment, remember we are talking about the LMD readership segment, generally an affluent segment, but we still had 2 local brands, Kotmale and Highland, doing really well and getting the better of craft. Similarly, we had Signal doing better than Sensodyne. Right? Again, you would assume with this segment, Sensodyne would be the brand that people would want to talk about, but it was actually a Signal that did well. So as you can see, a really good mix of local, international, premium, mass, telcos, banks, diversified brands, companies. So a good mix of representation from the LMD readership. I was in fact pleasantly surprised when I saw the list as well to see, I think it's a reflection of the LMD readership as well, that you've got a good wide range of individuals subscribing to the LMD magazine or being subscribers to the LMD magazine as well. So that sort of was the key highlights there.
We're nearing the end of our conversation, and if I ask you, looking towards the future, in your view, what new measurement criteria or methodological changes do you think needs to be added to the list and to the research in the coming years?
I would say more than a change in the measurement criteria, because right now what we have is simple, straightforward, and is what is required for a survey like this, for an award like this, for an accolade like this. But what I would like to see is the rationalization of the category list. So like I said, we had a 34 category list of 34. Maybe we need to include a few more. Maybe we need to look at some categories slightly differently. So maybe that's something that we can work on in the years to come. Also, I would like to see how we can expand the coverage, how we can get more participation, so that it is seen slightly. It's not seen only as an exclusive category list, but it's inclusive, and we get more people into participating in this list. So those are probably the 2 changes I would do more than the measurement itself.
I think it's been a lovely conversation, and thank you very much. But before I let you go, any closing thoughts you'd like to share with our audience tonight?
Yeah, I think I would say that the need to invest in brands is paramount, right? That's what is going to drive awareness. It's not just about the product, but also on the corporate as well. There are lots of companies that invest fair bit on products and services that they offer. But corporate communication, promoting your brand, corporate brand is also equally important. Embrace digitalization, especially to drive communication and brand presence. I think that's important as well. We also see that consumers are spoiled for choice. Hence, the relevance and differentiation is key, right? When they have a choice, corporates and brands need to understand that the more choice that consumers have, customers have, they need to see something that's relevant to them, and they need to see something different to the other brand. So you need to drive that in your communication as well. Local brands are doing well. They need to talk about local heritage and contribution to the economy. So why do I need to buy a local brand? Why do I need to look at a local brand over a global brand or a multinational brand? On the other hand, for corporate brands and global brands, they need to talk about contribution to the economy and country as well, not just about the product benefits. So when I'm buying, when I'm purchasing, when I'm engaging the services of a multinational or a global brand, I need to also feel that I'm giving something back to society, giving back to the country as well. We also need to look at brands that need to invest in sustainability as well. And here we are not talking about, because customers understand and realize the importance of it. Right? This is not about just, painting your walls green and saying, I'm sustainable, right? I mean, don't assume that your customers, your consumers are so naive and stupid, right? So you need to contribute something. And it is also not about doing some CSR activity, right? Doing one-off CSR activity is not what consumers are talking about. A continuous, consistent, relevant, strategic, sustainable contribution to society, contribution to the larger cause of the country. I think these are probably the key highlights that I would talk about.
We've been in conversation with the Managing Director and CEO of PepperCube Consultants, Atheek Marikar. Atheek, it was lovely having you on the show, and thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
And to all our viewers, thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for watching and stay safe.